Welcome back as we continue our way through the bones of the skull. So we've done the skull bones from the outside, and last time we did the skull bones of the floor of the skull. I apologize for the abrupt ending when we were learning about the middle nasal concha. So where we're going to start this time are what's visible from the anterior part of the skull. And so the first bone we're going to learn about is the inferior nasal concha. Right above it, you can see the middle nasal concha, which was part of the concha. These are two separate little bones that are very easily seen looking at the nasal cavity. So this slide shows both of these nasal concha we have to see. The lowest one are the inferior nasal concha, and then above that, the middle nasal concha of the ethmoid bone. The next bone we want to learn about is the vomer. And for the vomer, go back inside the nasal cavity where you had the bony nasal septum dividing it into right and left nasal cavities. So if you recall, when we were talking about the ethmoid bone, we were only talking about the bony part coming down from above. Now we're talking about a bony partition coming up from below. So let's transition to the right picture, which is the mid-sagittal view. And start up there at the skull. Behind the frontal bone, you can clearly see the crista galli of the ethmoid bone. And then you would have the perpendicular plate, and then this huge downward projection is that perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone below the crista galli. And that only comes down about halfway. Then highlighted in blue is the vomer. See, anteriorly it's quite narrow, and then posteriorly it is quite thick. And so although you can see it in the anterior view, if you want to get a really good view, take your skull and turn it upside down. And so here's the teeth, this is anterior, and where you're going to look is this area right there. And all the bony protuberance that you see in the midline right there, that is all vomer. And looking at the mid-sagittal view proves it, because this entire area is vomer. There is no perpendicular plate on the posterior aspect. And so now if you're asking yourself, well, Dr. Powell, what about this area here anterior to where the vomer meets the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone? That's where the nasal cartilage goes, and that's why the anterior part of your nose is so flexible. Okay. Now, neither of those are the nasal bone. For the nasal bone, you have to go right here, like between your eye sockets up high. And we have these tiny little nasal bones. So when people say they broke their nose, sometimes they mean the nasal bones, but oftentimes they may mean the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone or the vomer, and not way up here, because this is much more solid and held in place, whereas down below. And in fact, if you look at this skeleton on the far left, you can see that his bony septum is not straight. It's quite crooked, indicating that this skeleton did have a fracture between the vomer and the perpendicular plate at some point. The next bone we want to talk about is just posterior to the nasal bones in the eye socket, and these are the little lacrimal bones. And so it's right where the corner of your eye would be, the bone that's right in there. And then the next bones are your cheekbones. Okay, so not down here, but way up here by your eye sockets. This is your cheekbone up here. And the word for your cheekbone is called the zygoma or the zygomatic bone. And when you look at it, it kind of has like projections going in three directions, going superiorly to meet the frontal bone, and then going medially to meet with this bone, which we'll learn shortly, and it also has a posterior projection, which we are going to learn about. And that posterior projection is called the temporal process of the zygomatic bone, okay? So from the zygoma, we have a temporal process. And if you recall, from the temporal bone, we had a zygomatic process, okay? And those two processes together is what gives us this beautiful little arch right here, called the zygomatic arch. So the zygomatic arch is made of the zygomatic process and the temporal process. So in other words, it's made of the temporal bone's zygomatic process and the zygomatic bone's temporal process. Okay, so if you need to replay that to get it, go right ahead. Okay, so those are more views highlighting just the zygomatic arch. And if you get asked to name the bones, it's of the temporal and zygomatic bones. Okay. Now we're going to move medial from your cheekbones to the maxilla, and notice the maxilla is not only the part that has your teeth, but it goes all the way up to the floor of the orbit, and is also going to be forming part of your palate. Put your tongue between your teeth on the roof of your mouth, and that 80% of that hard part is going to be the maxilla, which gives us a couple of landmarks to learn. So the first landmark is the part of the maxilla that the teeth sockets and the roots of the teeth are located in, and that's called the alveolar process of the maxilla. And then the second part has to do with the roof of your mouth. So literally put your tongue right behind your teeth and move it posteriorly. And at some point you will feel the hardness give way. Okay, so all of the hard part is this bony part. But what I want you to realize, only about the anterior 80% of it is maxilla. And that part is called the palatine process, because it's the palate, the palatine process of the maxilla or maxillary bone. So what is the other 20%? Well, the other 20% is a little bone on each side called a palatine bone. So yes, we have two maxillary bones and we have two palatine bones. Okay, so your hard palate is made of the palatine process of the maxilla and the palatine bones. All right. And with that, we are done with bones from the anterior view. So thank you once again for all your hard work, and I will see you again soon.